Shalom Chaverim. Today, Parashat Shelach, and we're going to do it together with Michel Foucault, the French 20th century philosopher, and specifically with his idea of technologies of the self that I will elaborate on shortly here. So, to start, I want to share with you a Talmudic story. Not just a Talmudic story, one that I found pretty hilarious and even a little weird. It appears in the Talmud in Masechet Menachot. And it starts like this. It starts, מעשה באדם אחד שהיה זהיר במצוות ציצית. What it means is like, okay, there was an incident, or we're going to tell you a tale about a man who was very observant about the mitzvot, specifically of the tzitzit. Okay. So this man, who was observant, decides to go to this top-tier escort service and pays in advance 400 golden coins to get to this particular prostitute. And he set up an appointment at a set time, and it all describes how he appears there, and her maid opens, and he said, oh, it's me who paid the 400 golden coins, and he's ushered in, and he is treated really with all the fancy stuff you can imagine. There are actually 7 beds. 6 of them are silver, and the top one is golden. And he is climbing on top of these beds to that 7th bed on gold and silver ladders. It's really, really fancy. And the Talmud describes that the men and the prostitutes sit on the top bed completely naked. And then, this is really funny, in the moment of truth, suddenly out of nowhere, the 4 fringes of the men's talit hit him in the face. Now, this is really weird because a line before that, it was said that he was completely naked, but out of nowhere, the fringes hit him in the face, and he remembers the mitzvah of tzitzit and goes back down to the ground. And the prostitute climbs down and sits next to him on the floor, and she tells him, I am not going to let you go until you tell me, what do you hate about me so much? Am I ugly? What have I done wrong? Like, what is wrong with me? What is going on? And the man says to her, literally, I swear by the temple that you are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. You've done nothing wrong. But I was reminded of the mitzvah of tzitzit, and the 4 fringes reminded me that of all the other mitzvot. So I cannot, or mitzvot commandments, yeah, so I cannot proceed with this act that I was about to do. Now, what he refers to, the man in that moment, is he refers to our portion. Our portion ends with the commandment of the tzitzit, and it is written towards the end of our portion, והיה לכם ציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני. It literally means, and you have the tzitzit, the fringes, and once you see it, you will be remembered of all of the commandments of Adonai. ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבביכם, meaning, and you will not follow your hearts, ואחרי עיניכם, or your eyes. So basically what this commandment said, you see the tzitzit, you will be reminded of all of the other mitzvot. And what does it mean? You will not be following your heart or your eyes. It's basically, you will not be following your desires, which is exactly what the man is feeling. It's interesting because this verse that I'm reading from our portion ends, ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, which is really interesting because zonim, it means lustful, and the word zona in Hebrew means prostitute. So there you have it. So let's continue the story. The woman is in awe. And she tells the man, look, I'm not going to let you leave until you leave me a note, basically with all of your information. I want to know your address, your name, your bet midrash, where you pray, and leave all this information for me, with me, and then I will let you go. And he does that. So, after the man leaves, these prostitutes basically sell all of her property, And she divides it into three. 1/3 she takes to bribe the government. The other third she gives to the poor, to charity. The rest she keeps, and she goes to look for the man. And she comes to the Bet Midrash, where he left her the address. And the rabbi comes out, and she says to the rabbi, I am here to marry one of your students and convert. And the rabbi says to her, I have a feeling you are here to marry a specific man, a particular man. And so he's over there. And she goes and she marries him, and there's a beautiful line to end the story, that she brings those gold and silver sheets from those 7 beds, and the rabbi tells her, now you will be able to use them properly. So she's being redeemed. Now, what I like about the story, besides the typical Cinderella pretty woman theme of the redeemed prostitutes, is that it's a story that tells really of not one encounter, but 2. So the top encounter, where the man and the woman were sitting physically naked, exposed to each other when it comes to their desires and seduction. But the second encounter happened on the ground, where they were emotionally naked, where they actually were able to see each other for who they really were. And that caused a big change in both of them and helped them to reach their true selves. So in a way, what the story tells us is that what the tzitzit did was actually helping these people to transform into their true selves. And this is actually really ties to technologies of the self, because it is the core idea of technologies of the self. So Michel Foucault, for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar, born in 1926, died in 1984. And is a French philosopher, a historian of ideas, and actually also a political activist. He actually developed this idea of technologies of the self in another book. It's a 3-volume work called The History of Sexuality. This is, by the way, both of them were borrowed from Central Library here in downtown LA. If you haven't been, it's beautiful and magnificent, and you should go and get books. If you are interested in Foucault books here in Der Nister, we found 2 copies. We have This Is Not a Pipe, and we also have, for those of you who are very interested, The Archaeology of Knowledge in Russian. So there you go. But back to technologies of the self. So I would just start by reading the main idea, and then I will help explain it. Okay. There are 4 major types of these technologies, okay? So it's like technologies of the self. Each a matrix of practical reason. 1, technologies of production, which permits us to produce, transform, or manipulate things. 2, technologies of sign systems, which permit us to use signs, meaning, symbols, or significations. In other words, it means language. 3, technologies of power, which determine the conduct of objectivizing of the subject. Okay, so the power of institutions. And 4, technologies of the self, which permit individuals to affect by their own means or with the help of others a certain number of operations on their own bodies and souls, thoughts, conduct, and way of being, so as to transform themselves in order to attain a certain state of happiness, purity, wisdom, perfection, or immortality. Okay, so let's unpack what Foucault is saying here. So he basically says that there are 4 types of technology that shape our identities. So there's basically what we can manipulate as far as what is things, the technologies of production, and language, right? How we manipulate the way we speak and construct sentences together, which is the what they call, the French call, signs, right? And then there's the technologies of power. So obviously our identity is being shaped by the institutions in power, by government, by religion, by the economical forces around us that obviously shape who we are. But the most important thing for Foucault is the fourth one, which is technologies of the self. So basically, while we are obviously influenced by all of these other technologies that shape our identity, we actually have an active role in shaping our own identity. And throughout history, there have been many different methods where we could apply those technologies of the self to shape our own identity. And Foucault claims that if you do that critically, that is an act of resistance. So what were those methods that changed throughout history? So, for example, in antiquity, in Greece and Rome, so if you think of Stoicism, for example, you think of those methods were more of that of, writing and reflecting and meditations and resisting. And, what is Stoicism, right? Living simply. So those were methods that people used in order to achieve virtue, in order to reach their true self. And it sounds familiar to us now because New Age culture takes a lot from those philosophies, but it's really to simplify, to strip, to resist, right? And practice that. And then in early Christianity, in medieval times, right? So those methods were all about restraining yourself and fasting and suffering and abstaining, right? However, the problem there was it wasn't to reach self-autonomy, it was for submission, and it happened out of fear. Now, if you think of our modern era, what are the methods that we use is psychology, right? And self-help. And, all of the practices that we have today. Now, for Foucault, if we don't practice all of those critically, we are basically then are submitting ourselves to all of those powers. So, for example, we can think that, in modern time, the New Age, meditations and living simply, right? This is an act of resistance by shaping our own identity to resist consumerist or capitalist culture around us. But if the yoga pants that we used cost $200 that we saw on social media, then it's not really a critical way of applying it, right? If that simple shirt is performative, that is not the point. So the key word here for Foucault is critically. What Foucault prefers out of all of these methods that were enacted throughout history were, of course, the Greek and Roman methods to achieve virtues. And he really, really claims that applied critically could be a liberating act. And back to our tzitzit, what's nice about it is that our first impression would be that the tzitzit would be a symbol of religious oppression. But I would argue and say that the men and the women used that symbol critically, and what they found in liberating themselves is true love, and really, really transformed to reach their true selves, which is what Foucault says is our higher goal here. So I want to conclude by reading you something exactly along those lines that Foucault said in an interview in 1982. And he says this: I don't feel that it is necessary to know exactly what I am. The main interest in life and work is to become someone else that you were not in the beginning. If you knew when you began a book what you would say at the end, do you think that you would have the courage to write it? What is true for writing and for a love relationship is true also for life. The game is worthwhile insofar as we don't know what will be the end. Shabbat Shalom.